stories. I'm Gammie, and I'm so happy that you could join me tonight for story time. I hope you've enjoyed your week. You've had some happy, fun times this week, playing and having fun. And so without further ado, let's get right into our story tonight. Permission for our reading tonight's been given by public domain, and the story tonight is called The Tale of Jemima Puddle Duck by Beatrice Potter. Gammie's never had any ducks before. Have you, boys and girls? Have you guys had any ducks? Let's see what Miss Jemima Puddle Duck's up to. What a funny sight it is to see a brood of ducklings with a hen. Listen to the story of Jemima Puddle Duck, who was very annoyed because the farmer's wife would not let her hatch her own eggs. There's the farmer's wife. And there's Jemima Puddle Duck. Her sister-in-law, Mrs. Rebecca Puddle Duck, was perfectly willing to leave the hatching to someone else. I've not the patience to sit on a nest for 28 days. And no more have you, Jemima. You would let them go cold. You know you would. I wish to hatch my own eggs. I will hatch them all by myself, quacked Jemima Puddle Duck. She wants to do it herself. She tried to hide her eggs, but they were always found and carried off. Jemima Puddle Duck, she became quite desperate. She determined to make a nest right away from the farm. She was going to try to get her a nest somewhere away from that farm, wasn't she? So she set off on a fine spring afternoon along the road that leads over the hill. She was wearing a shawl and a little bonnet. See, there she is with her shawl on and her bonnet. Heading off, she's going to see if she can find her a nest somewhere. When she reached the top of the hill, she saw the woods in the distance. She thought it looked like a safe, quiet spot to make a nest. Jemima Puddle Duck was not much in the habit of flying, but she ran downhill a few yards, flapping her shawl, and then she jumped into the air. There she goes. She flew beautifully. When she got a good start, she skimmed over the treetops until she saw an open place in the middle of the woods where the trees and brushwood had been cleared. Jemima alighted rather heavily and began to waddle about in search of a convenient dry nesting place. She rather fancied a tree stump amongst some tall foxgloves, but seated upon the stump, she was startled to find an elegantly dressed gentleman reading a newspaper. He had black prick ears and sandy-colored whiskers. "Quack," said Jemima Puddle Duck with her head and her bonnet on one side. "Quack." She doesn't quite know what to think about that, does she? The gentleman raised his eyes above his newspaper and looked curiously at Jemima. "Madam, have you lost your way?" said he. He had a long, bushy tail, which he was sitting upon as the stump was a little bit wet. Jemima thought him mighty civil and kind of handsome. She explained that she'd not lost her way, but she was trying to find a convenient dry place to nest. Who do you think that is, boys and girls, sitting there on that stump? Oh, well, is that so indeed? said the gentleman with his sandy whiskers, looking curiously at Jemima. He folded up the newspaper and put it in his coat-tail pocket. Jemima complained of the hen back at the farm. Well, indeed, how interesting is that? Well, I wish I could meet with that hen. I would teach her to mind her own business. But, as to a nest, well, that's no problem. I have a sack full of feathers in my woodshed. No, my dear madam, you will be in nobody's way. You may sit there as long as you like, said the long-tailed, bushy-tailed gentleman. He led the way to a very retired, old, dismal-looking house amongst the foxgloves. It was built of straw and turf, and there were 2 broken pails, one on top of another by way of a chimney. Where do you think he's taken Miss Jemima Puddle Duck? This is my summer home. You would not find my winter house so convenient, said the hospitable gentleman. Do you think that's his home? There was a tumble-down shed at the back of the house made of old soap boxes. The gentleman opened the door and showed Miss Jemima in. The shed was almost quite full of feathers. It was almost suffocating, but it was so comfortable and very soft. Jemima Puddle Duck was rather surprised to find such a quantity of feathers, but it was very comfortable, and she made a nest without any trouble at all. Look at all those feathers. I wonder if she's wondering where those feathers might have come from. Let's see. When she came out, the sandy-whiskered gentleman was sitting on a log reading the newspaper. At least he had it spread out, but he was looking over the top of it. He was so polite that he seemed almost sorry to let Jemima go home for the night. He promised to take great care of her nest until she came back again the next day. He said he loved eggs and he loved little ducklings. He should be proud to see a fine nestful in his woodshed. Is that what he's trying to do? Do you think he's trying to be helpful? I don't know. He might have something else up his sleeve, on his mind. Let's see. Jemima Puddle Duck came every afternoon. She laid 9 eggs in the nest. They were greeny white and very large. The foxy gentleman admired them immensely. He used to turn them over and count them when Jemima was not there. At last, Jemima told him that she intended to begin to sit the next day. And I'll bring a bag of corn with me so that I need not never leave my nest until the eggs are hatched. They might catch cold, said the conscientious Jemima. Well, madam, I beg you not to trouble yourself with a bag. I will provide oats. But before you commence with your tedious sitting, I intend to give you a treat. Let us have a dinner party all to ourselves. May I ask you to bring up some herbs from the farm garden to make a savory omelet? Maybe some sage and thyme and mint and 2 onions and possibly some parsley. I will provide the lard for the stuff, lard for the omelet, said the hospitable gentleman with sandy whiskers. I wonder what he's thinking. Jemima Puddle Duck, she was a simple-minded little duck. Not even the mention of sage and onions made her one little bit suspicious. She went round the farm garden, nibbling off snippets of all the different sorts of herbs that used they used for stuffing roast duck. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. And she waddled into the kitchen and got 2 onions out of a basket. The collie dog, Cap, met her coming out. "What are you doing with those onions? And where do you go every afternoon by yourself, Jemima Puddle Duck?" Jemima was rather in awe of the collie. She told him the whole story. The collie listened with his wise head on one side. He grinned when she described the polite gentleman with sandy whiskers. Do you think the collie knew that might not be a gentleman? Let's see. He asked several questions about the wood and about the exact position of the house and the shed. Then he went out and he trotted on down the village. He went to look for 2 foxhound puppies who were out at a walk with the butcher. He went to find some buddies, didn't he? Jemima Puddle Duck went up the road for the last time on a sunny afternoon. She was rather give out with bunches of herbs and 2 onions in a bag, hauling it all up a hill. That's hard work. She flew over the woods and landed opposite the house of the bushy, long-tailed gentleman. He was sitting on a log. He sniffed the air and kept glancing uneasily around the woods. When Jemima alighted, he quite jumped. It startled him. "Come into the house. As soon as you have looked at your eggs, give me those herbs for the omelet. Be quick." Well, he was rather abrupt. Jemima Puddle Duck, she never heard him speak like that. She felt surprised and she felt quite uncomfortable. While she was inside, she heard pattering feet around the back of the shed. Someone with a black nose sniffed at the bottom of the door and then locked it. Jemima became much alarmed. Who was it? Is that the collie? A moment afterwards, there was the most awful noises, barking and baying and growls and howls, squealing and groans, and nothing more was ever seen of that foxy, whiskered gentleman. They took care of that sly old fox, didn't they? Then Cat opened the door of the shed and let out Jemima Puddle Duck. He had a bite on his ear, and both of the puppies were limping, but they had helped Miss Jemima not get caught by that sly old fox. Jemima Puddle Duck, she went home with kept the collie and the 2 dogs, the foxhounds. She went back to the farm and she laid more eggs in June, and she was permitted to keep them herself. All 4 of them was hatched. Jemima Puddle Duck said that it was because of her nerves. She had always been a bad sitter. The end. But she hadn't. She was a good little mama, wasn't she? She wanted to sit on her little eggs until they hatched. Well, boys and girls, Gammie hopes that you enjoyed the story tonight, the tale of Jemima Puddle Duck. Her adventures on trying to lay her eggs and get them hatched. That was a cute little story, and I enjoyed it too. And if you enjoyed it, boys and girls, I'd love it if you give me a big thumbs up and like and subscribe to Gammie's Bedtime Stories. That would mean so much to me, to Gammie, and I appreciate it so. I love our time together, each story time. I love telling you stories, and I hope you enjoy listening to them. And until story time again, boys and girls, God bless you all and sweet dreams. Bye-bye.